To me, that was huge. And what happened after that is that I launched that project. It was really successful. Because of that success, I was getting some interviews, got the interest of some studios, and I got hired by a nice studio in Boston. I went and became a professional game designer, and I worked there. The problem, though, is that really I spent the next 5 years, that was 5 years ago, I spent the next 5 years trying to recapture that feeling, and I still haven't really recaptured it until today. Today is the first time that I'm really starting to feel a little bit of that. And the reason that is because I launched my personal development blueprint, and I'm putting new videos out, and I'm starting to get that sense again of creative contribution. And I haven't even gotten any reactions from anybody yet for this content, but I'm just seeing that I'm proud of it myself. I'm proud of the stuff that I'm putting out there, and I'm starting to see again that getting that tingle of that feeling that I got 5 years ago when I knew that I was on the brink of releasing something that was going to impact people in a positive way. And not only that, but I was putting my soul into it. Like, this is me putting myself on the line. I'm not sure really how people are going to react. I'm not sure if I'm going the right direction. So I'm just saying, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna express myself. I'm gonna give my gifts, and I'm gonna see how it's going to work. And this has been really challenging to me for 5 years. You might ask, well, why did it take you 5 years to get back to this point? And well, that's a good question. I've been asking myself that for 5 years now, because I've been that hit, that drug that I got after that release of creative, that sense of creative contribution. I've been after it for 5 years now, and it's almost kind of scary because I forgot what it feels like until just now, and it's like it tingles down my spine, and when I think about that, it almost brings tears to my eyes because it's such a powerful feeling. And I think that if I wasn't lucky to have just kind of landed that hit with that game, that maybe I wouldn't have even realized that that was a peak experience that was even possible for me. And so I kind of wonder, like, do people even know that this is something that is out there for them? I think that a lot of people don't, because just the way that I see people thinking about their jobs and the way that people work their jobs, just kind of the 9 to 5, grinding it through, not really putting their soul into it, not working in a creative capacity, not really sharing themselves, not really caring about having any sense of contribution. When I think about that, then I'm like, these people probably don't even realize what they're missing out on. This is like the greatest joy, one of the greatest joys in life that you can kind of put yourself in. And going back to this Nexus idea, right? This is exactly what was happening in the Star Trek Next Generations, is that this guy had an experience, a peak experience, by interacting, coming in contact with this Nexus. Then it was so powerful to him that everything else in life wasn't that important. He was after that, and then he could dedicate his whole life to pursuing it. And so, back to my point as to why it took me 5 years to get back here. It's because after I graduated, and then I went on and became a professional developer. The problem there is that I went to work in a big team environment, and I never got that sense of contribution to the project that I got when I was working on my small little thing. It's a little bit counterintuitive, because I thought that when I was graduating and becoming a professional, and that I would be working on a big, real game, what I was working on in the end was piddly stuff. When I was working on a big game that was going to be sold in, Best Buy or Walmart or one of these big stores, and it was something that's going to be on a console like the Xbox or the PlayStation or the PC, then that's going to be like even a bigger sense of contribution. But what I ultimately found was that when you're working in a team environment, your sense of creative autonomy and creative contribution gets diluted. If you got 100 people working on a project versus one person working on a project, then it's almost like you're getting 1/100th of the amount of input into that project. Especially when you're just starting off and you're a newbie and you don't get that much creative autonomy, you don't have that much say in this project. And so there, when I was working for about a year, I didn't get that sense of creative contribution. And I started realizing that if I wanted that same kind of sense of contribution, that what I really needed to do was go into business for myself, and that I couldn't do that in a studio environment. I couldn't do that working for somebody else. So for me, that first year of working as a game designer was really bittersweet, because on the one hand, I finally made it, and I made it to the big leagues, right? This was like my dream job. This is something that I've been dreaming of since I was a kid, and I worked really hard to get there. But on the other hand, it was really bitter because I felt that I wasn't getting that sense of contribution, which was the whole reason of why I tried to get there. And so I started to realize that really I came to this kind of dark and saddening conclusion, which made me very depressed, is that I have to quit, because what I really need to do is I need to go into business for myself. And at that point, I had no idea about how business worked, how to do that. I didn't have any capital, I didn't have any money. I couldn't quit my job because I didn't have the money to quit my job. I needed to stay there to make ends meet. And I didn't really know how to create a game studio. I didn't know how to take the passion that I had for game design and convert it into something like a business. So I started getting some ideas, started researching it, but I also knew that I just didn't have the capital for it, because it's hard to start a game studio in your basement. And this was just before mobile gaming got started. So at that point, it wasn't really feasible. There was no really way to start a low-budget game. And so I was thinking, well, I have to raise capital. And what I did then is I started my own business in internet marketing. And that was something that I really didn't enjoy doing. I didn't enjoy internet marketing. In fact, I didn't like marketing at all. I had a real hatred for marketing because I don't usually like the kind of values that, that marketing espouses. And so I said, you know what, screw it. Because I need to get myself financially independent, I'm going to go into internet marketing. I'm going to do that for a few years with the hope of building up enough capital to start my own studio, etc., etc., etc. And to cut this long story short, what ended up happening is I did quit after a year, started my internet marketing business, but then the internet marketing business kind of dragged on and on and on and on. And even though it became really successful for me, and I did end up creating quite a bit of independent financial independence for myself, I was never able to reach that point where I was able to really start my own studio. And at that point, mobile gaming went really caught on fire, and I started doing a little bit of that. But I felt like because I wasn't working in that studio environment, and because I quit my studio job, I felt like I really wasn't a game designer anymore. And so I wasn't getting I just wasn't really getting that same passion that I had anymore for game design. And I ended up quitting that and just focusing on internet marketing for about 3 or 4 years. And that really took me off track because I was partly seduced by the money of it. I was partly seduced by the comfort that I was now in because I had the money. I didn't really need to work much anymore. I didn't need to push myself creatively, which is challenging to do. And so I ended up not having that creative hit anymore. And I didn't have any sense of creative contribution, nothing like I got from that game project that I started. And so I was like that guy in Star Trek: The Next Generation that came into contact with the Nexus and felt so great about it, but then that Nexus moved away and it moved into other galaxies or whatever, and he no longer could be in the Nexus and he couldn't feel it anymore, but he wanted it so bad. And so for many years, that was the case for me, is that I was doing internet marketing, and on the one hand, I had to be fully involved in that because it required all my time. On the other hand, I always had my eye out on something bigger because I wanted that hit, that drug I got from creative contribution. And I was never able to really make anything that made that click for me. And, I was struggling with it, and then I started kind of even losing the drive to pursue it. Because what happens after a while, a year passes, 2 years pass, and what happens is that your mind just kind of shifts on to new things, and you kind of tend to forget. That feeling no longer feels as palpable as it was at one point, and so you slowly forget about it, and you start rationalizing away, and you start saying, yeah, you know what, my life is pretty comfortable, it's pretty good, I don't really need to go out there, I don't need to be rattling cages and doing all this crazy stuff and taking all these crazy risks just to get that little bit of hit of creative contribution. And so that's what ended up happening, is that I kind of forgot about it, let it go, thought that maybe it was naive or that maybe I'll get it in the future somehow. And so I didn't have it. And then, at one point, I just got so fed up with the internet marketing stuff that I had to say, enough is enough, and that I have to find something else for me. And I knew that it was no longer going to be game design, and what I had to do is I had to make this really challenging transition, which I didn't even know that was possible at the time, was I had to shift life purposes. And for me, that was really challenging because I had to say, okay, my life purpose was game design, and that was something that came about relatively randomly through my childhood, just because I started playing a lot of games and I got involved with it. And I'm like, well, what else could it be for me? If it's not game design, is there even anything else that it could be? And so I had to do a lot of soul searching and just kind of looked into what I was doing as my hobbies. And one of the hobbies that I had at that point was reading a lot of personal development stuff. And I thought, this is kind of interesting. And then from there, I transitioned it into going into a coaching program. And then it took me a year of training and doing all that and a lot of insecurity, just to get to the point where, I launched my website. And then even after I launched my website, still a lot of insecurities and challenges, and still not getting any creative juice, because building a website is something that takes months, maybe even years to do, especially at the quality level that I wanted to do it. And I felt like, I needed to really put myself into the website. And I didn't just want to build a cookie cutter site like everybody else. I wanted to build something that was unique, something that was expressive of my gifts of myself. So I needed to make something creative. And it was, again, like, what is that going to be? And all the creative challenges involved. Because expressing yourself creatively is a whole topic unto itself, and all the challenges and fears and limiting beliefs that come with that, and all the emotional kind of toil that goes into that, and all the self-doubt and self-sabotage, and all the resistance that's created there. I'm probably going to shoot a lot of videos on that topic in the future.